It's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes we cut ourselves short when we are a small business and think, oh, that's too big of a company to deal with me.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not the case at all. There's opportunities everywhere you look.
Welcome to the Think Big podcast, the world's first problem-solving podcast for entrepreneurs, where we discuss real business problems and provide real solutions that drive real growth. Today's guest, Inez Nazario Vega, is the founder and CEO of Business Essentials Virtual Assistant. Inez's challenge is figuring out how to scale her business while still nurturing her existing client relationships. Today, we'll discover how solutions can be disguised as problems. Inez, welcome.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be in your podcast. Very excited for you and this podcast for the business community. As you know, I'm very passionate about the business community, and so being part of your podcast is a pleasure.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're able to make time to talk to me. I know you're an incredibly busy entrepreneur, but looking at at your background, I was particularly excited about today's call because we have so many things in common. Looking at your background, first of all, I have two daughters in their 20s. And I know you have a daughter in the 20s. So we feel each other's pain as far as that's concerned.
Yes, mine is turning 23 this coming Saturday. So yes,
Okay.
but
Okay, well,
she's
mine
done
will
really
turn
well
my
though.
youngest will turn 24 in June, and the oldest turned 28 in, January. Yeah, but also, I know and I just you say you lost your loved one to a heart condition. I'm assuming that was your husband,
Yes.
so I lost my wife to a heart condition as well 5 years ago. So,
Wow. Very
that was
similar because mine will
yeah.
be 5 years in July.
Okay, okay, yeah, 2021. And she was definitely the love of my life as well. So I saw that. You mentioned that you had lost your father. My father just passed in October at 98 years of age. So yeah, I don't know how long ago your father passed,
Well,
but I just
today is actually 7 years since he
okay,
passed.
okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear
Today.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just it just was eerie that we had that. We're both serial entrepreneurs, which we both know. And I was curious. My very first job out of college was working with Xerox in Greenwich,
Wow.
Connecticut. So when
What
I
a
saw you
cool
work for
world.
Xerox, yeah, yeah, and then you've traveled to 26 countries. I've stopped counting countries. My dad was in the Air Force, so I'm a military brat. So I tell people I have studied, worked, and lived in, 4 continents, right? So I don't know how many countries at some point, I probably need to count them, but yeah,
Well,
so
that
so
number
yeah,
is outdated, actually.
okay.
That number is outdated. It's up to 30 countries. I visited
Wow,
Dubai.
okay.
Well, United Arab
Yeah,
Emirates is the country, but I visited Dubai last June, which is unfortunate what's going on with the geopolitical
yeah,
and
yeah, absolutely.
military conflict right now. But it's a beautiful world out there. I just have to say to the people listening, if you have not gone out of the USA continent, you have to travel the world and see the world.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much there's so much to learn and to get enriched by, and
Mhm.
it's a beautiful world out there.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm amazed at how much diversity in everything there is. Climate and geography just in the United States, but going outside of the United States and seeing other countries, it's just amazing. I was actually just having this conversation with someone a couple days ago where I was telling them, when I travel, I don't like to what I'll do is, if I fly to a particular place, when I get to the airport and I'm picked up by a cab, I befriend the cab driver, and I always ask them, I'm like, "When would you be my driver the entire time I'm wherever I'm at?" And I pay them for that, and then it's like, I let them know it's like, I really wanna understand what it's like, for the person that lives here all the time, right? Someone native to wherever I'm at. And so, can you take me to restaurants that normal people eat at, places that normal people visit? I don't want to see any of the touristy stuff, and if I have to do that, let's get it done in the first day
Yeah,
so
the
that the
first
rest.
2 days and then get the rest.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Immerse myself in the culture is what I like doing as well.
yeah.
And I'm actually a member of this organization. It's called Her House,
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
where we get to stay with people that live there for free. It's an
Right.
exchange lodging services, for lack of a better term.
Okay,
And the whole reason behind this particular network is to stay at places with people that live there, and so
okay.
that you
Wow.
can see what the culture is really like.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's incredibly interesting. Um, well, I want to transition. I mentioned that I like helping people solve problems. I don't know if I'm good at it, but I like doing it anyway, or at least attempting to do it. And so I had asked you for a couple problems, or at least one. You gave me three, so I want to tackle all three. But I wanted to start
And
with yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
So I wanted to start with you talked about how difficult it can be to scale your business when you want to scale while still nurturing the existing client relationships that you have, right? So
Correct.
I want to talk about that. Can you give us a little bit of background on that
Well,
issue?
I think that is a problem with many micro what I call micro entrepreneurs, people that we start on our own and then we start growing the business. And I being a virtual assistant agency, I see it all day long. People that want to scale, but they just are limited. But the interesting thing is, being as a virtual assistant agency, I started by myself. Like
Okay,
I started back in September of 2021, like shortly
okay,
after my husband passed away. And I said, you know what? I'm not gonna keep doing what I'm doing. I'm gonna do something I love to do.
yeah,
And it was just me, myself, and I. And within 3 months I was overbooked and started to recruit virtual assistants to help with the overflow. However, I think as my natural way of doing business is that I love to nurture my clients. I
hmm,
want to be there for them, and I
right,
have to think outside the box. Your podcast is the think big, and I think I sometimes I have to position myself to think outside the box, and where the technology of clothing myself so that I can take care of all my clients the way that I would like to, it's not there yet. But I
right,
think
right.
that's the biggest challenge for me, is like letting go and letting others nurture the clients while I continue to grow the business.
Okay. Well, there's something I want to dive into because there's something, I mean, you have to explain this. So in 2021, you lose a spouse, which is incredibly difficult. Obviously, starting a business is incredibly difficult. A lot of people don't realize that. They see a lot of successful entrepreneurs and think it's easy. It's one of the hardest things anyone will do in life. And then we locked down with COVID in 2020. So even 2021, we're still pretty much in the height of COVID. So you got all these things that could potentially, limit your ability to succeed, but yet and still you decided to launch into this. So I'm just curious what was going on in your mind to think that, one, I should do
I
this,
was
and two,
crazy.
I can make this successful.
Well, it's funny you're asking that question. Thank you for the question, Jeffrey. But, people, they only see the outcome of things. They don't see the behind the scenes of what happens
Right.
before. And
Yep.
the truth of the matter is, during COVID, I lost a business. I had
Wow.
another
Okay.
business and I lost that business. I literally lost over $64,000 in that business.
Wow. Okay.
And but when you have the entrepreneur DNA,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very difficult, at least for me, it has been, because a lot of people would say, well, you lost the business. Why don't you get a job? And it's, which would have been the most sensible thing to do
Right.
in,
Right.
in that circumstance. But at the same time, I was scared. My husband passed away unexpectedly. It was not something that he was ill, and he was ill for a very long period of time. But when I lost the business due to COVID, where I had to close doors, literally on January of 2021, I wanted to give myself that space to think what I wanted to do next. And I was fortunate and blessed enough that I was there to take care of my husband when it happened without having to think about a business. But when everything was said and done, eh, you probably can relate to this as an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, that doesn't go away easily.
Yeah,
And people
yeah,
look at you like you have three heads because it's like, girl, you just lost all this money. You just lost your business. You lost your husband. What are you doing? Take a break.
yeah,
And it's like, if I take a break, I'm going to drive myself crazy.
right. Yeah,
And I started just to do a lot of self inventory, just looking back throughout my entire career, where were my strengths, my weaknesses, and
mhm,
kind of design what kind of business I was going to do going
okay,
forward.
yeah. And what was it in your skill set that you said, virtual assistant is the right business? Because when and this when as serial entrepreneurs and as entrepreneurs in general, I always when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, I tell them, you know millions of businesses, so you can start anything once your mindset to hey, I'm going to launch something, right? You have a million options, but
Hmm.
hopefully something leads you uh, uh, you know, to one opportunity, and hopefully it allows you to leverage whatever your passion is 24/7, 365. So can you talk
Yes.
about, why specifically virtual assistant services? What drew you to that?
That's a very good question. I think since I was very young, I was always pulled into solving problems for organizations and growing up for businesses. And even if I came into a job, which the job that took me from Puerto Rico to Ohio, which was with Loctite Corporation, which is now Henkel, the super glue company. I started with the business. I started with the company literally driving a forklift because I couldn't find anything else in my
Okay.
little hometown.
Right.
And I started in the warehouse, and I had already a degree, but that was the science of the times, and that's what I did to make a buck. And I within months I was pulled into the office.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, like, not even 6, 7 months later on, I was pulled from the shipping office to the, purchasing office, and within a couple months, I was pushed into the customer service office. Later on, I was called from Ohio, "Hey, do you wanna help us manage the Latin American customer service?" So, I figure at an early stage of my career that I had the ability and the talent to not only diversify within the business, but problem solving within the business.
Right. Right.
And it's interesting because I love the operational side of the business, but somehow I always get pulled to the sales and marketing as well. And they say that that is a very rare combination, people that have the strength in both. And I can see it because I remember when I was working at Invacare, which is a medical equipment manufacturer, the fights between sales, marketing, and operations is endless. And I saw that in from company to company. In Xerox, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when people said, "You are a rare breed, you do very well operations, and you are really good in sales and marketing as well. How do you manage?" And you probably can relate to that as well, Jeffrey.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. My first 11 years of my career before I went back to school to get a master's degree was in sales. Initially with Xerox, I was with Xerox for 2 years and then went to AT&T, and I spent 9 years at AT&T, and then 11 years into my career decide, "Hey, let me go back to school," you know?
Mhm.
Um, but I am I'm much more comfortable with operations as well, and that's where I view myself as an expert. But that 11 years of sales experience was invaluable, right? Xerox, and yeah, I mean, you're a lot younger than me, so you were at Xerox a lot later than I was, but they used to send all of their sales people, no matter where they were, in Xerox to Leesburg, Virginia, for spin sales
Really?
training multiple times a year,
Mhm,
and again, it's solution based selling. Um, and I learned, unfortunately, I got fired from Xerox because I wasn't performing, but I learned what I needed to learn. And when I went to AT&T, I became their top global salesperson in my first year in the field, just applying what I had learned at Xerox. And I learned very quickly that sales is best done through service. Right. So the whole solution selling and trying to solve problems for customers was what made me a very successful salesperson, right? Because I don't view myself self as a great salesperson with great sales skills, but I'm a very hard worker, and I think I'm somewhat intelligent, and so when I learn things, I apply what I learn, and I try to be the best at anything that I do, right? So yeah, that sales and operations is an incredibly rare combination. But also, and I get this from you talking about you're driving a forklift with a company first. It's like entrepreneurs need to be jack of all trades, right? Because
mhm,
at the beginning, when you have no staff and no money, you have to
mhm,
do everything, right? Right. So I
absolutely.
mean, it's actually I think benefit to
Mhm,
be diverse and
mhm.
to be multi skilled, right?
Yes, and I think that's when your original question, what drove me into becoming a virtual assistant, is exactly that, my lifelong career experience, and where I noticed that time and again that was my niche, that to just come into the business, look to the through different lenses, for that business owner, and look at the whole picture from
Yeah.
operational side and the sales and marketing side, and try to do the best to help them get to the next level.
Right, right. So when we talk about you obviously want to scale your business, but you've got existing clients. You need to take care of those existing clients. So talk about the difficulties you've had growing your business while still focusing on the customers you have. What are some of the issues that you have that makes it difficult to do both of those things simultaneously?
Yes, well, like I said earlier, it's just the fact that in my personality, and I think that comes from the sales and marketing passionate side of me, that I want to nurture like almost take their hand and say, "Hey, let's walk together to help you grow." And when you are scaling, right now, I have a team of 11 virtual assistants. I've lost count of all the accounts.
Yeah,
Um, you want to hold hands with all of those clients, and
right.
yet we only have 24 hours a day. No
Yeah,
matter how
yeah,
you slice it, no matter how you cut it, it's just not gonna give you more than that.
yeah.
And so that's the biggest challenge that I find myself dealing with right now.
Right.
Um, Scaling itself, as you know, from the operational side, I'm not too concerned. I have a really, really good team, a virtual assistant with good heads over their shoulders. They all have their own areas of expertise,
Right.
and which I'm very grateful that I'm able to provide the service to our clients,
Hmm.
with very talented, um, with
Right.
very talented team.
Yeah.
Um, but it's one thing to give your virtual assistant that sense of, hey, take good care of this client and do this and do that, because you have a way of doing things. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
an ego thing more than anything, I think. It's an ego that you think, okay, nobody can do better than I can in taking care of these clients. Um, but it's something that ironically, as a virtual assistant, I have to learn to delegate that as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I'm sure you understand this as a serial entrepreneur that, one, you've already mentioned there are only so many hours in the day. We can't do everything. So we got to figure out how do we do what we want to get done in the limited time we have to do it, right? So
Absolutely.
and I think you've already touched on some of the potential solutions. There's really three excellent ways to scale, right? So one is, and you may or may not have thought about this, but when you look at larger organizations that you can align with, right? And what you're looking to foster with this dynamic is, and this is why you focus on much larger organizations. Um, you're leveraging their significant marketing dollars to identify opportunities for potential clients, right? And you're pre-qualifying, allowing that big, that strategic alliance partner to pre-qualify these clients for you. The reason they want to partner with you, first of all, they at some point they were a small business as well, right? So they
Yes.
understand your journey, you know. Um, and actually, to be honest with you, when you talk to people from large organizations, if you ask them a simple question of when did you have the most fun working in your organization, assuming they were there from the beginning, I can almost guarantee they will always say, when we first started, we had no money, we had no clients, we had no, no resources,
It was
you
easier
know,
to make decisions and run.
yeah, right, right, exactly. So, yeah, you're exactly right. It's the nimbleness of a small business, right? We don't have to ask anyone permission to do anything, right? So, if we see an opportunity, we can just seize it. A large organization is boggled down with bureaucracy. They can't do that. If they see an opportunity, you've got to get 10 levels of management approval in order to move forward. It's much easier for a large organization to identify the opportunity and leverage their small business partner to actually execute on, not only closing the opportunity, getting the work done, and then they just find an amicable way to split revenue, right? So the small businesses actually, there's a very natural synergy between, small and large businesses. And when you're looking at these large business partners, you really want to look at four pools of people. So you want to look at companies that have services that complement yours, right?
Mhm.
You want to look at your supplier base. You want to look at your customers. And you actually may even want to look at competitors, right? So, if it's a competitor that's significantly larger than you, more than likely they don't view you as a competitor, right? So, as long as neither of you are infringing on either of the two's territory, you know, uh, 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 my last company was a private cloud computing IT business. I partnered with Dell Computer right out of the gate, right? Dell was a competitor technically, but I mean, our first year we did $150,000 in business. Dell, multi-billion dollar company. I mean, we were nothing to them,
Yes.
and, so they weren't fearful of us in any way, shape, or form, but that actually it gave us the opportunity to reach out to them and say, "Hey, we actually see some opportunities, and we'd love to partner with you, to execute on these opportunities. I think we can create, multiple win-wins." And, I'm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia area. And it worked out perfectly, right? Um,
It's interesting because you reminded me of a quote of one of my career mentors because, being a smaller business, doing business with a larger corporation is, I will always remember this, it's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion.
yeah, yeah.
And the first time she said, I was like, what? Yeah,
Right,
it's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion. That
right,
what explains is that it's better to be the head of a small business that can move fast, that is very agile and coming and going into different spaces within the business world, than being the tail of a lion that has to ask, the mobility and the way that a mouse can move and act and decide is much quicker than that of a lion.
right, right, absolutely.
So it's interesting because sometimes we cut ourselves short when we are a small business and think, "Oh, that's too big of a company to deal with me."
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not the case at all. There's opportunities everywhere you look at.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my advice to you would be to look at, particularly, I think there's some opportunity when you talk about, complementary organizations. I know that in your background, you mentioned that you were, the president of a local chamber. Chambers, I think, are, because you've got this hodgepodge of organizations, small businesses that are members of a chamber to form some type of strategic alliance with chambers, multiple chambers all over the country where, they are actually, introducing you to their membership, I think might
Mhm.
be a way to scale, so that would be one thing. You also, again, you may not realize, but you've already have the solution to your problem. And when you talk about customers, so you're talking about, uh, um, you know, serving your customers, which is you absolutely want to do, but that hindering potentially your ability to focus on scaling. That's actually the way to scale, right? So when companies focus on customers and implement world class customer service techniques into what they do, with the focus on building this relationship and trust to the point where not only does the customer buy everything you sell for the duration of the life of your business, but they also sell on your behalf. What you're doing is you're evangelizing your customers, right? I always tell entrepreneurs that the most effective sales force um, is a happy customer, right? Um,
Yes,
because what
absolutely.
happens in the sales process, I mean, you know this, having spent some time in sales, we as humans don't trust salespeople because we don't know why they're trying to sell to us. And rarely is it because they have our best interests at heart. They've taken the time to understand what our pain points are. They've matched a solution in their bag of tricks to that will hopefully solve to the best of their ability our pain point. They're giving us an opportunity to test it and see does it solve, and give them feedback, and then ultimately they make a sale. That's rare. Usually, and I just know this from spending 11 years in sales. Salespeople dissect compensation plans on the first day of every year, and they
Mhm.
know how much money they want to make, and they know what within their bag of products and services is going to get them to their number quickest. And I can guarantee you, if you watch the behavior of salespeople, you know, th- over the course of a year, they're going to sell the thing that compensates them the most and gets them to their revenue goal. They're going to disguise it with customers and make them think that, "Hey, you need this, and this is why you need it," but they may in a lot of cases, don't need it, right? But the salesperson doesn't really care. They're trying to make money. Yeah,
Exactly.
and so when you leverage customers to sell on your behalf, you get away from that because what customers will do is they'll sell to their peers. I mean, it's like the if I gave you an example of, your next door neighbor comes home with a brand new car and you think it's really nice, and it's like, hey, I might want to get that too. And you go over to your next door neighbor, you start asking them, peppering them with a million questions about this new car. I mean, you're going to find out everything you want to know that you would go to a dealership to hopefully find out. Uh, you're going to ask how much did they pay, what kind of gas mileage it gets, why they picked this particular car, you know, uh, um, it just all these things that you want to know that are critical to you to making the purchase. And then, if you hear all the answers you want to hear, you're going to go to the showroom and try to buy the vehicle. I always tell salespeople when that happens and someone's been referred to you, shut up and give them a contract, right away. Because if the more you talk, the more you're going to talk yourself out of a sale. They already
Yes.
have the answers to all the questions that they want. That's why they showed up on your showroom in the first place, right? Because they
Mhm.
heard the things they wanted to hear and now they want to buy,
Yeah.
so leveraging your existing customer, but actually doubling down on, doing the best job possible for the customers you already have actually is a way to scale.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting because, as you know, I also have a podcast. It's called
Yeah.
Unstuck Business, and we are preparing to do a recording this coming week, and where the topic is reputation, relationship, and growth. And and doing the little research about the topic, it's proven that good reputation, meaning those little reviews that you see in people's Google space and pages, and or a little testimonial that people may post in your page, what have you, they can have that almost 220% impact on your sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also continue to build a relationship with that
Right.
person that gave you that testimonial, that person that gave you that review, because those little things that put out there about who you are and what you do,
Mhm, mhm.
I mean, to put it in numbers,
Yeah.
I don't think there is any other tool out there that gives me a 200% return on investment that quick.
Yeah, if there is one, I don't know. I'd love to know what it is, but I don't think there is another one out there. So, yeah,
And it's something that I think that talking about what you're saying in sales is, just nurture your clients. I think it's a very good strategy. It's
yeah,
a
yeah,
very proven strategy.
yeah, yeah,
Not only good,
absolutely.
but a proven strategy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I use this analogy a lot we both have daughters, so we can understand this. But I'll tell an entrepreneur, it's like if you have a daughter, and let's say they become Girl Scout. And they come home because now it's Girl Scout cookie selling time, and they come home with their boxes of cookies. Who did they sell their first box of cookies to? And I don't even give them time to answer. I answer for them. I'm like, their parent. Why? Because you have a relationship with them. You have a vested interest in seeing them succeed. You don't want to see them fail. You buy all of their boxes of cookies if they give you an opportunity to. And then, we've both had jobs before. I'm sure you've been, it could have happened at Xerox or any of the jobs you've had where someone in the office came in with the Girl Scout cookie selling sheet, for their
Hmm.
daughter and got everyone in the office to buy cookies. So, uh,
Yes,
so it's when you're a business, I always tell the entrepreneur, think of yourself as the Girl Scout. Think of your customer as your parent. How do you craft a relationship with a customer so they feel like they're your parent? So that they feel like they have a vested interest in your success. They don't want to see you fail. They'll do anything to help you succeed, right? When you develop that kind of relationship, you know, they're going to evangelize for you. They're going to take your Girl Scout cookie sheet to work and sell it, sell on your behalf.
absolutely,
It's yeah. I
absolutely,
mean that's the relationship you want to build with customers. And I always tell people it's easier to sell to a customer you already have than to try to sell to a brand new customer that doesn't know.
absolutely,
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
so
It's interesting because I think that's one of the things that we see a lot of bigger companies
mhm,
do is that they're always trying to get
yeah,
that next new customer and forgetting to nurture the ones that they do have. And it
right.
costs a lot more to get a brand new customer than to just grow the one you have in house
Yeah,
already.
yeah. And as a serial entrepreneur that just because you're successful and getting big doesn't mean you're going to be around forever. There are, if you looked at the Standard and Poor's 500 and 1900, and then looked at it today, I don't know how many companies you'd find that were on that first list that are on the list now. There aren't going to be many, so
Absolutely. Well, Xerox is a good example. We both worked at Xerox. Xerox had his
yeah,
years
yeah,
or his age of glory, as I like to call it,
right,
where who didn't know Xerox? I mean, it was
yeah,
more
yeah,
like who didn't know Xerox at the time, and it was an amazing company. While I worked at it, I worked for Xerox for almost 8 years,
okay,
and managed was more in the project management, technical solutions side of the business,
okay,
and it was interesting to see that company from what it
yeah,
was to what it is today, and
yeah.
it's a matter of adjusting to your clientele needs.
Well, I was at Xerox from 79 to 81. And I found out very quickly, actually, it was pretty interesting. This is how I was able to sell a lot easier. Um, when I understood that Xerox, and the name of the company comes from the concept of xerography, right? Which is making a copy. And so when I got in the field initially, the goal is to get past the receptionist, to get to into the office to talk to someone to sell them a copy machine. And that's incredibly difficult to do. The secretary is a gatekeeper and then they're they're there to keep you out.
Mhm.
Um, but I realized very quickly that every time I'd go into an office, people would call their machine a Xerox machine.
And even
It
if it was
wasn't
a
that.
Canon.
Yeah, yeah, it could have been any manufacturer, but they all called it a Xerox machine because of xerography. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to use that to my advantage. I started taking my Xerox badge when I went to a receptionist and said, I'm here to fix a Xerox machine. And because they
Wow.
called it the Xerox machine, they let me in. Then I'd go into the office. I would look for I'm 20 years old. I'm looking for the biggest office, right? And I'd knock on the door, and usually it's the general manager, the CEO, president, whatever. And 9 times out of 10, they were just amazed that so they were like, how in the world did you get in here? And I would tell them
How
what
do you
I
pass the
did.
gatekeeper?
And 1 out of 2 times, they would be so impressed that I had done what I had done. They would let me in the office and talk to me for like 15 minutes, and which was, I didn't make sales all the time, but I was, able to make a lot of sales just because I was too stupid to realize what I shouldn't have been doing, you know, and leveraging that whole thing of, what Xerox had done was because they laser focused on who they were serving initially, um, they
Mhm.
they they became known. That name, carried so much weight that now, the name precedes you when you're walking into someone's office, and it's like, who hadn't heard of Xerox, right?
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
alone made it easier for me to at least, get someone to talk to me. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Um,
I find it fascinating the way that you were creatively bypassing the gatekeeper.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So, the other thing that and you're already on this, as well. You may not have realized it, but it's another way to scale is using the resources that surround us, right? So we build a team, and your team consist of, in your case, I don't think you have a co-founder, but it could be co-founders. You have executive leaders, you might have managers, you have staff, you might have a board of directors or a board of advisors, mentors. All of these people are really your A team, and so leveraging your team to sell on your behalf, because hey, the people that work with you, this weekend they might go do a cookout, and they're around a lot of other people who work for other companies. And if they're talking about your company glowingly, that might lead to sales, right? So, what I did with my IT business was I made sure that, we had it was an IT business, so we had an, technical test that we gave people that were coming in for technical positions, to make sure that they could do what they said they could do on their resume. But then we also leveraged a personality test, like a Myers-Briggs or a 16 personality, one of these tests. And we actually tested people in the company first, particularly, and we kind of honed in on the successful people within the company that, not only were they good at their job, but they embraced our value system, um, our belief system, and then looked at that as kind of the baseline for what we wanted people to score on these tests when we're looking at potential new hires. And the combination of those two things allowed us to develop a staff of people who believed what we believed, who wanted to do, their jobs in the best interest of the company. And so they were incredible ambassadors for the company when they weren't in our offices, right? Because they're talking to other people who trust them, and they're speaking glowingly about our company. And that led to more sales, right? Or at least to opportunities to make sales. And
yes.
so, you've talked about your team, and I don't know what you're doing to vet your team before you bringing them on board, but if your team shares your vision, shares your belief system, empower them to go out and talk about your business, when they're, in their normal daily lives.
Yes, and that's a very good idea. I've been very blessed. I've had, the team of 11 virtual assistants, and I've only had like three let goes
Okay,
in
okay,
5 years. And the ones that I have in the team, they're very They are good about talking about business essentials. I think the opportunity here is to perhaps mentor them on how to talk about business essentials
Yeah,
because
yeah,
most of the VAs that I do have, they started on their own and they're still on their own because my business model is a 1099 business model,
yeah, yeah.
but they don't like the sales part of it.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah,
And so there's where I come into play and basically um market and sell their test their so it'd be interesting to take that approach with the team and say, "Hey, we're gonna train you how to say what to say and where to say it."
yeah, yeah. Well, but again, and most people aren't comfortable with sales.
Yes,
You know, vast
that's
majority of
not
humans aren't. Yeah, but here's where you can help them, and it's again, I go back to when I found out early in my career, sales is best done through service. Have them they can become much more effective in selling if they stop selling, right? As crazy as that sounds.
yeah.
And instead focus on get them to get to know people and identify pain points that people are having, right? That could be solved through the products and services your company provides, right? You know, tell them forget about selling. I just want you as you're talking to people, I want you to uncover what kind of problems they're having, right? So that we can determine whether or not we can actually solve any of these problems, and help them out. And if they focus on, just, oh, okay, so you want me to be an interviewer? Yeah, yeah, interview. Just ask people questions, right? To hopefully elicit problems they're having, and then we can determine, later on whether or not we have any solutions for any of the problems you've identified, right? I think people will get a lot more comfortable with that, and I think that there'll be a transformation, right? Where people will say, "Hey, I'm not really good at sales. I don't like sales, whatever." But as they start to ask questions, start to identify problems, you start to identify solutions, and sales start happening. I think there's gonna be a switch that's gonna go on in the mind that says, "Hey, I'm actually good at this," and now I like it. And I think there'll be, you'll build up this team of incredible salespeople who don't even realize they're really making tons of sales.
Yes, well, for me, the biggest my biggest source of clientele has been referrals. Um,
Okay,
and I've been very blessed to have a good network of business people that understand what we do and how we do it, and there's where most of our business has come from is word of mouth,
okay,
actually. And,
yeah,
and I think that's, like to your point, it's good to mentor
mhm,
our staff to become face of the company that can speak to it.
right, right. So I know you gave me 2 other problems, but before I pivot to those, I just wanna from all that we've been discussing, if you were to, when the call's over and you go back to the business and you know, and apply anything, is there anything that from the conversation we've had so far that you think you might want to try in your business? And then the other piece of it, I like these to be two-part interviews. I'm going to ask you if you're comfortable to come back at some point when it doesn't matter, not doesn't have to be next week. It could be months from now, but to come back because I again, I really wanna help entrepreneurs understand what works and what doesn't work, and so, I wanna talk about problems, but then hopefully, we've come up with some to-dos maybe that you think you might wanna try in the business, and I'd love for you to come back and say, "Hey, I tried this," whatever it was, "and this worked or it didn't work." I don't really care if it doesn't work. I'm more interested in just the process of you going through trying something and seeing whether it works so that, you know, other entrepreneurs who are more than likely experiencing similar issues, we know this is a relatively universal issue of, focusing on existing customers and whether or not this hinders or helps you from selling. Um, um, but if you try something and it doesn't work, I think that's great information for
Mhm.
other entrepreneurs to know. Okay, I don't want to try that because that doesn't work. We know that this isn't an unsolvable problem. We what we have identified is something that wouldn't work, right?
Yes.
So
I'll be happy to do that. I think to answer your question, the one thing to acquire is just to engage the staff that we do have right now into the process of helping us scale.
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, sounds good. So you had mentioned one of the issues is one of the other issues was scope creep. Um,
Oh,
uh, People
yes.
that
That's a
that
big
that,
one.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I
That
know
is
the
a
term
big
from being in the consulting industry. I worked for Deloitte Consulting for a significant period of time, post my MBA. And so, for people in the audience who don't know what scope creep is, it's particularly relevant in consulting engagements, but it's actually relevant in technology as well. My company did a lot of software development projects, and so, when you initially contract with a client to do something and build something, you know, you basically scoped out, that, hey, this is what we're going to build, this is how long it's going to take, here's who's going to work on it, here's what's going to happen when, here are the deliverables we'll give you so that you know what you're going to get. Uh, um, and you start the project, right, at a certain price based on all these assumptions you've made about what the scope's going to be. But as you're working, the client's consistently asking, "Hey, can you also do this? Can you also do that?" And the more you allow them to do that, the quicker you have a project that you thought was going to cost you 10,000 ends up costing you 100,000. And now, if the customer ends up paying that incremental 90, it's okay. But a lot
Mhm.
of times we just want to please our client, so we do all this additional work, and then we go from, hey, we had this $10,000 project that we thought was going to cost us, say, 5,000, so there'd be 5,000 in profit, but we ended up doing 90,000 in additional work and didn't get any revenue for it. That may have cost us 45 grand. So now we've gone from a project that was going to make us 5 grand to a project that cost us 40 grand, right? So talk about, scope creep in your world and why
Yes.
that's an issue and what you've done to address it so far.
Okay. Well, scope creep in the virtual assistant world comes from all different angles because the way that we operate, we provide services and administrative support, customer support, project management, social media marketing. Those are five categories that we provide services and support to businesses. And what has happened over time is that we will draft out a contract. Let's say, for example, we're going to manage your calendar and we're going to clean up your database and help maintain your database or your CRM system. And before you know it, because we can do it, they ask the question, will you manage our email as well? It's already part of the same software with the calendar is and what have you. And it's always of course we can do it, but there's an additional charge to that. It's like, but we're your clients, we have been with you for 6 months or we have been with you for 8 months. Where's the loyalty? And I think there's where that the challenge comes about is when there is this expectation
Mhm.
that just because we can do it, we can just squeeze it into the contract at no extra charge.
Right, right. Yeah.
And
Yes.
the way that we have, we try not to upset the client, but we just bring it down to business. This is business. We outline the original contract with these services. If you want to add services, there's extra hours that need to be invested to provide you with the support. That happens a lot also with website design and development
Okay.
because website design and development, you have certain criterias. Okay, this is going to be a website for informational purposes only. You're going to have 5 tabs with information, and you may end up with a website that is only like 10 pages
Right,
of a platform. But before you know it, they are, oh, I want to sell in this page. And I want to add a calendar on this page for booking. And I want to do this. And it's like, that's not what the contract was for. We
right,
can't
right,
do
right.
it.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought that was included. It's like,
yeah,
no, it was not.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Those are extra features that require extra time. There's a lot more expertise in developing that kind of a website than just developing an informational website.
right, right.
So those are the things that I think they some of them is unintentional. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
And there's a lot of assumptions, a lot, when it comes down to the either to the virtual assistant services and or to the web designing services that we just need to learn how to educate our clients.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so one of the things you might wanna try, so when with virtual assistant services, there might be a 100 things that you could do for any given client, and obviously every client's not gonna need you to do 100 things, but you have that in your bag of tricks, right? Uh, but so part of how what I've seen in the consulting industry in addressing scope creep is one, it's how you lay out the project, right? So laying it out in phases. So you in essence giving um, uh, these cycles almost like where at the end of a cycle, you're instead of giving them one huge deliverable at the end, you're giving them deliverables along the way, right? And so a project that creates a website might have 10 deliverables along the way before you get to the end product. And so at each stage, you're stopping and saying, "Okay, we're giving you this. I need you to check this out. Make sure this is what you were looking for. Do we need to tweak this in any way, get shape or form? All right, that's good. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. So now they're all so if you say hey, there's 100 things we could provide for a client. Our onboarding processes, we're going to deliver one product or one service at a time you know? And so, so now we're gonna, hey, we'll take over your email, a response system first. And then once that's done, we're gonna come back and talk to you about, okay, we've taken that over. How's everything working out? Emails getting responded to quickly, no hiccups, whatever. All right, sounds good. Now we'll move on to the second thing, whatever that is. And so you're doing this in stages, right? Getting customer feedback at the end of each stage, and that is one good way to avoid scope creep. It also allows you within the stages, whatever your deliverables are, you can look at, and this is a lot easier to do if you have a mature company like yours where you have clients, you've done work for them. You can look at your clients and the particular services you provide them, and you've already gotten a sense of what scope creep could be with a particular service. So now you can kind of build in and say, okay, we're going to provide this, product A, but we know historically that, when we provide A, customers usually ask us for B, C, and D. Well, let's price product A so that already includes B, C, and D, right? So that
Mhm.
if, we're gonna give you A, in phase 1, we're gonna price it this way. If they come back and ask for B, C, and D, you've already got that built into your price, right? So it's not that, you don't really care about the scope creep at that point. And then if, once you've completely onboarded them and providing everything and, they're not using all of the things that you thought they were gonna use that other customers have asked for, you can adjust their pricing if you want to, which is
Mhm.
gonna make them feel really good.
Yeah.
So there are ways to tackle that. Yeah,
Oh, thank you for that advice.
yeah,
So
yeah. And
we try
then,
to put everything in one contract, and perhaps it's mostly like subcontracting, sort of. See, like
right,
just do one side and then just the other and just the other. It will probably
yeah.
not
And then
eliminate, but at least reduce greatly.
yeah, yeah, and the other piece of it is training your staff. If they're negotiating contracts on your behalf with customers, is training them on the scope creep issue so that they feel empowered to address these issues so that they don't get out of hand with
Mm-hmm.
customers. Um, 'Cause and they need to understand what the ramifications of scope creep to your business are on them as employees, right? If your business isn't as profitable as it needs to be, you may have to lay people off. You may have to pay people less money. You may not be able to give bonuses out. So helping them understand the economics of running your business and the impact that scope creep has on negatively impacting the finances to an extent where it could actually hurt them as an employee, I think will help them as they're negotiating with clients, whether it's in the contract phase or once the project is started and they're negotiating along the way. Because normally I'm assuming customer is going to, if they want something done, they're going to go to your staff first. You may not hear about it until after the fact, right? And training and empowering them to you know address this issue might be the way to address the issue. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and then the last thing you'd mentioned was technical bottlenecks. Clients' lack of understanding and knowledge of technology.
Hmm.
So can you talk about, kind of frame that for me? How is
Yes.
that a problem in the business?
It's a problem. It's an opportunity actually because business essentials virtual assistant, unlike most virtual assistant, we're just not plugging in a virtual assistant into businesses. We take a very consultative approach with
Hmm.
new prospective clients. And the reason we do that is that we want to be the most cost effective virtual assistant there
Yeah, yeah,
to be and for the client. And what we do in the original phases of integrating a client is that we assess the entire operations and we
right,
try to find whenever possible where can they implement technology to make work more efficient.
right.
And of course, very legitimate concern for the client. If they don't understand the technology, they are very hesitant to use it. And what I like to always tell them is, and this is another bigger this is another bigger issue that we encounter as well, that we come into the small businesses that they don't have documented processes.
Yeah,
They don't
yeah.
have their SOPs, their standard operating procedure organized and what have you. And when we start assessing their business and putting together those SOPs for the client, we identify areas of opportunity to use technology to help them. However, when they don't understand the technology, they don't want to
Yeah.
use technology. And that's where the
Okay.
bottleneck happens.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a process to help them not only understand the technology, but to embrace the technology. We always say when we come in, if you have a messy operation
Mhm.
and I plug in a virtual assistant without assessing how we can make your operations better, I'm adding wood to the fire. I'm not
Yeah,
solving the problem. I'm
yeah.
actually adding more problems to your problems.
Right, right.
So that's one thing that we do very different with than most virtual assistant agencies because, and not all of them. I'm not trying to, you know, talk bad about other virtual assistants because there's some amazing virtual assistants out there that are from the Philippines. I actually have two people from Venezuela working on our team and what
Okay.
have you. But a lot of entrepreneurs they say, "Oh, I need a virtual assistant to help me with this."
Mhm.
Okay, do you have that? that disorganized for them to understand what they need to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because you're gonna end up doing it yourself because you don't have a process of explaining how to do it.
yeah,
And more
yeah.
importantly, you have not even thought about ways of solving the problems with technology, which is so readily available from all
Right.
angles.
Yeah,
So that in itself is the biggest opportunity, I like to call it, more than
yeah,
a
yeah,
challenge. It's the opportunity to help the client feel comfortable with integrating technology into their operations.
yeah. Well, I think what you're running into, and it's again, this is very common. Most people are not comfortable with technology, right? And so, um, just like earlier we were talking about sales, most people aren't comfortable with sales
But
either.
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
similar approach. There's people that
right,
don't like
right.
sales, and there's entrepreneurs that they just don't care for technology. They're used to doing
Yeah,
the things the way they have been doing it. And one have to be understanding that even ourselves, we are resistant to change. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
as
absolutely.
human beings, no matter what the change is, small, big, or medium, we are resistant to change. So I think again, the opportunity here is how to help that client embrace the change.
Yeah. Well, this may or may not help, but I mentioned earlier that my last company was a private cloud computing information technology support service company, and I'm not technical, right? I had two technical co-founders, um, but that actually it benefited me because I was the CEO of the company, and it benefited me in talking to customers because the average customer wasn't technical. And so typically when I was talking to the president, founder, owner of a business that we wanted to bring on as a client, and I'm talking about our private cloud computing services, it's like, you see the stars in their eyes because it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, talking Chinese.
Yeah, the fact that I wasn't technical, worked out to my benefit. And the way I explained it to them was, um, you know, technology is merely a tool, right? It's technology is based off of computers. What computers do, it does everything humans do for the most part, not everything, but most things that humans do. But a computer can do it much faster, more efficiently, and at less cost, right? So because it's a tool, where technology can be incredibly helpful is when you have processes in your business that are you're doing manually that could benefit from automation, right? Where you can do them faster, you can do them more efficiently, you can reduce your costs because you can do it faster and more efficiently. That's
Yes.
where you want to bring technology in, right? So talking about it from that standpoint that and this is, yeah, we can call it whatever we want to call it, but it's all it is a tool. It's going to allow you, just look at things that you're doing manually that are taking up a ton of time, because time's the most valuable resource we have. We can't get it back. And if you're wasting a ton of time doing a lot of manual stuff that you could speed up and reduce your costs in your business by leveraging technology, that's where we wanna bring technology in to help you and
Yeah.
your business, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the approach that I've been taking lately. I always tell them, if I can give you even 4 hours back a week, what
Yeah,
would you do with those 4 hours?
right, right.
And then
Yeah,
if
and you can even try again, do this piecemeal, right? So it's like, "Hey, let's try this." We don't have to shift the entire function to technology initially. Let's take a bite-sized chunk of whatever this is that you're doing manually. Let's automate just a piece of it so that you can see, what technology is doing, how much more efficiently this is getting done. Because once they start to see those benefits, they're going to be, oh my God, I don't know why I didn't do this a long time ago. Please, please, do everything this way. You know. Uh,
yes, yes. Yes. So yeah, I appreciate that your comments and your suggestions.
yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I really don't have any other questions for you. I just want to say I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to me this morning.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey.
being brave enough to come and air out problems that every entrepreneur has problems, and we all tend to
Yes,
share a lot of the same problems, right? But being
absolutely.
brave enough to air them out in public, I commend you for that. and again, would love to have you come back at some whenever you're comfortable, just to, for the things that based on the conversation we've had today, you've tried in your business so that we can see what's worked and what hasn't, which also will, I think will help other entrepreneurs who may be struggling with similar obstacles.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so
So,
much for the opportunity again, and I wish
all
you the
right.
very best with your podcast.
All right. Thank you very much. I look forward to being a guest on yours as well. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Thank you very much.